Hello there. In today's math lesson, we will learn multiplication of directed numbers. And at the end of the lesson, you'll be able to know how to obtain squares and square roots of numbers. Are you ready? Then let's begin. In our previous lesson, we learnt that directed numbers are numbers with size and a direction, a positive or negative direction. Examples include -3 and +3. In this lesson, we will be focusing on finding squares and square roots. From what we have learnt about multiplying directed numbers, it's obvious that a square is always positive. Squares are numbers derived after multiplying a number by itself, while the square root of a number is the factor of a number that can be multiplied by itself to give the original number. Squares and square roots are somewhat opposite of each other. For example, the square of 3 is 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. Now, here are some things you need to know that will help you find the squares and square roots of numbers. To square a number, multiply it by itself. For example, 4 squared equals 4 multiplied by 4, which equals 16. Squaring two negative numbers gives you a positive number, because a negative times a negative gives a positive. For example, -5 multiplied by -5 equals 25. Now, the square root of a number is a value which, when multiplied by itself, gives the original number. For example, square root of 64 equals 8. 8 multiplied by 8 equals 64. Now, perfect squares are numbers whose square root is a whole number. Example, 25 is a perfect square because the square root of 25 equals 5. An imperfect square is a number whose square root is a fraction. For example, square root of 3 equals 1.732050807757. Now, there are different ways to find the square root of a given number, and one way is through the prime factorization method. We can do that by following these steps. Divide the given number into its prime factors. Form pairs of similar factors such that both factors in each pair are equal. Take one factor from the pair. Find the product of the factors obtained by taking one factor from each pair. That product is the square root of the given number. Now let's find the square root of 144 by this method. 144 equals 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Next, you group the prime factors. 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Next, you square the factors. 2 squared times 2 squared times 3 squared. Next step will be to find the product of the factors. 2 times 2 times 3, all squared, which is 12 squared. Therefore, the square root of 144 equals 12. Now, apart from the prime factor method used earlier, you can use the multiplication table to determine the square and square root of numbers. For example, if we want to find the square of 7. Step 1. Look for column 7 in the vertical column listing the numbers 1 to 15. It could be less or more, as this depends on the multiplication table you're using. Step 2. Look for row 7 in the horizontal row listing the numbers 1 to 15. Step 3. The answer is where the row from step 2 meets the column from step 1. You can also use this method to read other charts and schedules as displayed on your screen. Now this brings us to the end of the lesson. We have learned 2 ways which we can find the squares and square root of numbers. Remember, to square a number, multiply it by itself, and the square root of a number is a value which when multiplied by itself gives the original number. See you in the next lesson.